Shout hallelujah, shout hallelujah, shout hallelujah unto the Lord. Sing it again, say, shout hallelujah. We're singing, shout hallelujah, shout hallelujah unto the Lord.
Well, good evening and welcome to the Discovery Bible Study here at the Beltline Church of Christ. We're glad that you've joined us today. If you've been with us, you know that we're in the book of Judges. And this time we're going to be in Judges chapter 15. Trey's going to be reading from the New Living Translation. We're just going to cover the whole chapter, about 20 verses worth. And Trey, it's up to you, man. Take it away.
All right. I'll just give a quick recap. Remember what happened in chapter 14 kind of leads into what's about to happen. He's going to get vengeance for the Philistines figuring out his riddle, which they did not do correctly. They went through his wife and threatened her family, and they got the riddle right, and he had to then give them stuff. And so here comes his revenge in chapter 14.
Right. And if you remember, his wife was given to the best man.
That's right.
And so that's going to play into this story a lot. So, all right, take it away, Trey.
All right, here we go. Later on, during the wheat harvest, Samson took a young goat as a present to his wife. He said, "I'm going into my wife's room to sleep with her," but her father wouldn't let him in. "I truly thought you must hate her," her father explained, "so I gave her in marriage to your best man. But look, her younger sister is even more beautiful than she is. Marry her instead." Samson said, "This time I cannot be blamed for everything I'm going to do to you Philistines." Then he went out and caught 300 foxes. He tied their tails together in pairs, and he fastened a torch to each pair of tails. And then he lit the torches and let the foxes run through the grain fields of the Philistines. He burned all their grain to the ground, including the sheaves and the uncut grain. He also destroyed their vineyards and olive groves. "Who did this?" the Philistines demanded. "Samson," was the reply, "because his father-in-law from Timnah gave Samson's wife to be married to his best man." So the Philistines went and got the woman and her father and burned them to death. "Because you did this," Samson vowed, "I won't rest until I take my revenge on you." So he attacked the Philistines with great fury and killed many of them. Then he went to live in a cave in the rock of Etam. The Philistines retaliated by setting up camp in Judah and spreading out near the town of Lehi. The men of Judah asked the Philistines, "Why are you attacking us?" And the Philistines replied, "We've come to capture Samson. We've come to pay him back for what he did to us." So 3,000 men of Judah went down to get Samson at the cave in the rock of Etam. They said to Samson, "Don't you realize the Philistines rule over us? What are you doing to us? What are you doing to us?" But Samson replied, "I only did to them what they did to me." But the men of Judah told him, "We have come to tie you up and hand you over to the Philistines." "All right," Samson said, "but promise that you won't kill me yourselves." "We will only tie you up and hand you over to the Philistines," they replied. "We won't kill you." So they tied him up with 2 new ropes, and they brought him up from the rock. As Samson arrived at Lehi, the Philistines came shouting in triumph. But the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon Samson, and he snapped the ropes on his arms as if they were burnt strands of flax, and they fell from his wrists. And then he found the jawbone of a recently killed donkey. He picked it up and killed 1,000 Philistines with it. Then Samson said, "With the jawbone of a donkey I have piled them in heaps. With the jawbone of a donkey I've killed 1,000 men." And when he finished his boasting, he threw away the jawbone, and the place was named Jawbone Hill. Samson was now very thirsty. He cried out to the Lord, "You have accomplished this great victory by the strength of your servant. Must I now die of thirst and fall into the hands of these pagans?" So God caused water to gush out of a hollow in the ground at Lehi, and Samson was revived as he drank. Then he named that place the spring of the one who cried out, and it is still in Lehi to this day. Samson judged Israel for 20 years during the period when the Philistines dominated the land.
See, isn't this such a good story? I mean, it's heartwarming. It's just
Heartwarming. Yeah.
On that note, I'm just speechless. So let's dive into our questions, Keith.
Okay.
This could be a little challenging for especially for question number 1.
Yes.
Yeah.
What do we learn about God from these passages? What do we learn about God from these passages? I love how when Samson. Okay, first off, I mean, this is getting kind of the second question. It's like, you allow me to kill these people. Now you're letting me just die not starve to death, but just die of dehydration. And what I love about it is God was no longer listening, but He acted.
Yeah.
And we so many times we want God to act in our lives like He did with Samson immediately, but God is always listening and He's always taking action. Maybe not the way we want it, but He's always listening and always taking action.
Cool.
And I like that.
That's good. That's good.
I go back to chapter 14 and verse 4. Again, it says, his father and mother didn't realize the Lord was at work in this attraction he had to the Philistine woman, who eventually, is burned to death by the other Philistines, and then he's going to take, he took revenge on them, and now he's going to take revenge on them because of that. And so, this is the way that God is bringing about the salvation of His people. He is going to free them from the bondage of the Philistines through these terrible things that are happening. And so even though things are not good and it is not being done in the right way, with the right heart, or in any way, anything righteous about it, God is going to be able to use what is bad to bring about what is good. Is that as close as I can get to finding God in this?
Well, maybe this is time for maybe this is the time for our question that we talked about last time that I said we would get to in the future, and that is why would God give him all of this strength in the first place?
Yeah.
You guys got any thoughts or ideas about why?
Well, I think it was to free. The point behind it was to, he's a judge, and God raised up judges to save His people from the oppression that they were suffering under, and also to free their minds, really, from the false religions of the oppressors. And so God is going to do that with Samson, but it's not necessarily, I guess, with Samson. It's through Samson,
right.
I guess.
Yeah.
In spite of Samson.
Okay.
And that's kind of where I'm going, because to me, God gave Samson the strength, and the people knew that's from God. They knew Samson was so strong because he was a servant of God. But the bad thing is Samson used it, yes, he used it for the wrong reasons. And he did a lot of dumb stuff.
Well, I think there might be another angle here to think about. So why did God give him this strength? Why did He give him the strength and then say, you can't kill people? See, that's where this, because He said, you're going to be a Nazirite from birth, you're not supposed to touch dead things, and killing people. He's in direct opposition here of what God had instructed him several times. Yeah, he kills 1,000 people, he's attacking this and that. So I don't think Samson understood his real calling from God.
Peace through strength.
Well, and think about...
But it didn't come out that way.
Yeah. Now, the Olympic Games haven't started yet. But there were games going on during the time of Samson where champions would come together and they would compete and they would do these things.
Yeah.
I always thought, this is way outside left field, but what if God gave Samson this strength so that when he competed in something like this, which was making its way toward Israel at this time, he could then point back, hey, this strength doesn't come from me. This strength comes from God. It would be another way for him for God to be a blessing to all nations. Hey, look at this champion. How does he do it? There's nothing special about this guy. It's not like the pictures where he's some muscle guy. I don't think that's who Samson is at all. He's maybe looks like me, this normal dude, right? Yeah. And yet he has this incredible gift that can only be attributed to God. And so I have a feeling that's kind of what God wanted. Let's show off this super strength. Let's show what happens and what God does through someone like this. But he completely rejects his calling. And he uses the gifts God's given him for the wrong purposes. Now that's where I want to go.
In a perfect world, yes. But here, to me, I go back to humility. Samson never had humility. To him, it's like God's given him all this talent. He's given this rule. He's given him everything he could ask for. And what does Samson do? It's all about me.
Yeah.
He brings
and backing up, because I don't want to miss this point about what this says about God. God gives amazing gifts to people.
To everyone.
We may not get the gift of strength like Samson, but He gives us incredible gifts that He wants us to use for His purposes. Yes. Are we? Do we? Samson doesn't. Are we going to get right what Samson got wrong? That's really, I think, the question that we need to be asking in all of these chapters, 14, 15, 16. Are we going to get right what Samson got wrong? God had a plan for his life. He had a purpose for his life. He rejected that purpose. God used him anyway. That's why he's in the Hall of Fame of Faith. But he could have done so much more.
Yeah.
He didn't have to go out killing people. He could have just showed this strength. And my guess is the Philistines would have cowered had they seen this man who God had blessed and used. They were already scared to death of God for all that he had done. I don't know. Maybe that's too far of a stretch. But that's kind of, I think, something that's important.
But then we'd
to say.
only have about 6 verses, like some other leaders. But I agree.
I would have rather had 6 verses
I
than
know.
killing thousands of people in quote unquote in the name of Jesus
look how,
or God.
I
I
know
don't
I'm
think that's
jumping
what's
ahead to
going
this
on.
question, but look how close he constantly stayed as close to the edge as he could, and it's like, to me, it's like he knew what his limits were. And it's like he just kept kind of pushing the envelope, the envelope. And to me, it's like that's his problem. It's like he just wanted it all to be about him, not about the nation of God. So,
Well, let's move on to question 2 so we can talk more
Right,
about
yes,
those
yes.
kind of things.
Question number 2, what do we learn about people from these passages? What do we learn about people from these passages? I just see him as an arrogant person. God gave him so much talent. I mean, he was a ruler for, 20 years? And he had so much talent, so much ability. He had good parents. He was raised right. He had everything going for him. And what does he do?
Throws it away.
Yes. And God has given each of us a talent. God has given each of us a way to talk to people or do something, because God's plan is for us, for me, to go out and teach others about his mission.
Yeah.
And how many of us are just kind of wasting our talent? How many of us are just sitting back doing nothing, like, oh, well, yeah, I should have done that, but I didn't? We got to make sure we're not like Samson. Yes, we're not going to go out and kill 1,000 people, but we got to make sure that we're out doing what God wants us to do.
Yeah, that's
So,
good.
living our life right.
I would just add to that one of the things I see in Samson, I see sometimes in people, and dare I say myself as well. Samson doesn't cry out to the Lord at all in the middle of this. He doesn't cry out the Lord when he kills the baby lion. He doesn't cry out to the Lord in the middle of his event with his wife.
Yeah.
He doesn't cry out to the Lord when he is killing 30 people to get them the change of clothes. He doesn't call out to the Lord, should I go take vengeance? When does he call out to the Lord? When he needs something. Yeah. And I think that's so us, that sometimes we go about our life and we do our thing and we do our thing and we do our thing, and God's kind of there in the background, but he's not really in the front.
Present.
But when do we cry out? When the sickness hits. When do we cry out? When this big event's coming up. When do we cry out? When we really need God. And then when it's over, we're like, okay, hey, great. Maybe we say thank you. Maybe we don't. And then we just go back to life as normal. And that's what Samson does. He only cries out to God when he needs something. Even in his death, which we'll look at later, the only time he calls on the Lord is, and he calls on the Lord not for the sake of God, but for the sake of himself.
Right.
And so Samson's a lot like us. I know he's a lot like me. And so I think there's a lesson for us.
And that's a good point, because in the Army we have a saying, or they have a saying, you fight as you train and you train as you fight. And how many times do we as a Christian wait till the struggles come in, and then that's when our prayer life kicks in, or that's when we start studying the Bible, or that's when we start coming to church? We got to live our life as if we're living for God every day. We can't just pick and choose what day we want to serve God. And we got to serve him in the good times and the bad times. And he's always there.
Yeah.
And,
There you go.
What do you think, Trey?
I was going to say, kind of both of you touched on what I was thinking. You got really close, and I was worried about it for a second. I see Samson and the people of Israel, the 3,000 men of Judah, they're fighting the wrong battles. Mm-hmm. They're in this situation because they've chosen false gods. They've married into these families that worship false gods, and rather than saying, hey, these gods are false, you need to worship Jehovah, the one true God, instead they say, okay, well, we'll put Jehovah up here on the shelf next to your false gods, and we'll just include them all. And as if it's just no big deal, and it is a big deal. It's a really big deal to God.
Yes.
And
I mean, it's the commandment, one of the 10 commandments. You shall have no other gods with me.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I'm the only one.
He's it. And so, but instead of fighting that battle, of saying, hey, we've gotten this wrong, and this is why we are in the situation we're in, they're going to go fight about one of these very things that is causing the situation. A wife from a Philistine.
Yeah.
This is the thing that you're supposed to be stopping. This is the thing you're supposed to be putting away from you. This is the main thing, your faithfulness to God. But instead of fighting about the faithfulness of God, instead of really focusing on it, I'm going to focus on this. I'm going to focus on your fields of grain. I'm going to burn I'm going to light all these fires, and I'm going to have to, other people are going to have to put out these fires. And it seems like, kind of reminds me about the church. We've got all these different things and a lot of different people with a lot of different opinions, and say, oh, I want, this is my thing, I want this, or this is what I'm doing, I need more help here, or I need more attention here, or this. And we have all these fires going, and the only fire that needs to be lit is go seek and save the lost.
Yeah.
Go
We've been given one job.
Yeah,
Preacher that
go
talked about
save
that
the
lately.
people. Go remind them who Jesus is and bring him to them. And in Samson's case, tell them about Jehovah. Give Jehovah to the people and wreck all those other gods. Get those false gods out of the way and point people to Jesus. But instead, let's go kill people and blow things up.
Well, and not only that, but look at the progression here. So Samson retaliates, and then they retaliate
back and forth. Yep,
and because they retaliate, he retaliates back.
Yep.
Every time it gets progressively worse,
Yep.
right? And that's what happens to us too. Somebody wrongs me, I'm going to hit back harder, and then they're going to hit back harder, and then I'm going to hit back harder, and you've got this building, mounting frustration, and you've got all of this drama and intense and this violence that can happen. Man, Samson is a picture of us in so many ways. You're exactly right.
The pridefulness that drives that. And really, what would have changed everything? A little humility.
Yes.
A little humility to say, wait a second, I'm not in charge. God's in charge. God, what do you want me to do? And just ask the question, and step back. And so maybe the next time you're frustrated with a family member, you're frustrated with someone at church, or you're frustrated with someone at work, or wherever it is, step back and say, wait a second, God, what should I do in this situation? I feel wronged. Should I feel wrong? And if I can see that that's a valid feeling, how do I go about it? Well, Jesus actually told you in Matthew 18, go do it. Go follow what he actually said, instead of retaliation and just keeping it going. Let's be about the real main thing. The main thing is go teach people the gospel.
I do feel like I got to mention this though. I love the thought. I love the picture of catching 300 foxes
That's pretty impressive.
and keeping them together to tie their tails together.
How long did that
And
take?
then light their tails on fire, or light a torch on fire. And to me, it's like that's awesome. I mean, seeing a fox in the wild, it's like, how am I going to chase that thing down?
How do
and
you
catch
stay mad enough? As long as it would take you to catch it. After I caught one fox, I think I'd be like, okay,
That
I'll
might
be
be
all
why
right.
he was
I'm
so
gonna calm
mad.
down. After catching one fox, I'm pretty sure I would be tuckered out and okay.
Yes.
300 and he's still mad?
Right.
Mad enough to put the torch in there and send them?
And it's not like they're in a fox pen, because there's no
No,
such thing.
right.
Right? So
Yeah.
he has to go find these things.
This is the epitome of those of us sometimes who write a letter and we should not send the letter,
Hit send on
Hit-
the email.
Yeah,
Right down
yeah.
here.
Just throw it in the trash. You got your feelings out. Now you should feel better and move on. Oh no, he's sending it.
And these weren't baby foxes.
It does not say they were baby
No,
foxes. That is true.
no.
That is true.
They covered a lot of ground, obviously.
Oh my goodness. Well, and I do think it's significant that they burned up everything, even where was it, the new or the uncut?
Right.
I mean, the entire
Everything's gone.
everything. What they would use to plant for the next season, all of it is gone.
It's gone.
Yeah.
He totally devastated them with
And
this,
the olive
with this
orchards
attack.
also.
This
Yeah.
is blowing things up.
Yeah,
this
this
is
is way
shock,
beyond.
This is shock and awe. Way before shock and awe it was a
That's
thing.
exactly
So.
right.
Phew.
Well, we could probably go a lot further with that, but let's look at question number 3, Keith.
Question number 3 is, how will you, this is
This
difficult, how
go
will
catch a
you
fox?
put this
Yeah.
into practice? I'm not going to catch a fox.
I have a fox in my neighborhood.
I'm
by
not
the way.
going to tie the
Cool.
tails together. I'm not going to send that fire on their tails. What am I going to do from this? I want to make sure that I do not jump to conclusions. I think I said that 2 chapters ago.
Mhm.
But too many times it's like you hear something, it's like when he left, it said in chapter 14, it's like he gave his wife to somebody else and he comes back and goes, I'm here to get my wife. What? Well, you gave her away.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, I'm not going to give my wife away. But how many times do we jump to conclusion? We say something that we don't want to say, or we think it, and then before we actually realize what we've said, we've done it. And we just got to make sure that we are careful to show the world God's grace and mercy and love through our life.
Mm.
So I know I'm not going to be perfect, but that's what I want to do.
Well, and to kind of piggyback off of that, why did he come back? He was led by lust.
Yes.
That's why he came
Right.
back to get his wife in the first place. He just wanted to sleep with her. So what is motivating our lives? Hopefully it's not lust. Hopefully what motivates us is to actually do the will of God, right? And had he been that guy from the beginning that says, let me do the will of God. I mean, I think his parents tried. I really
Well, that's
do.
the thing. If
I
he
think they
listened to
gave
his
him
parents.
everything that he needed to be successful, but he was so self-centered that he couldn't see what they were trying to do. Even in his very name of naming him, little son, basically. They wanted him to be a reflection of God to the world, but he wouldn't do it. He was motivated by the wrong things. And so I know for me, I don't need revenge to be a motivation. I certainly don't need lust to be a motivation. I need to be Jesus to be my motivation for everything I do, from how I respond when I get aggravated, to how I treat my family, my friends, my people at church, whatever that looks like, because those are together, by the way, friends and people at church. I've got to be led by, how's Jesus want me to respond to this, like you already said, more than momentary pleasure or things of that nature.
I want to be more, I know I've already said one, but I want to be more humble. I keep saying it, but I think that is one of the foundations that we got to make sure our Christian faith is based on, to be humble. Because like what you said, I am nothing without God in my life.
Have this mind in you, which was in Christ,
Yes.
right? Well, that's where I was going, was come down off of Jawbone Hill. Get off of Jawbone Hill.
Ooh, that's
and
good.
every time
that's
you
a sermon
think,
series
hey, there
right
you
there.
go, yeah. Every time you think you're something, remember that you're actually not. You're not that. And
Even in all you've accomplished.
yeah. We
Filthy
are
rags.
We are, yes, filthy rags. Yeah, it's filthy rags before God, Isaiah. But we are unprofitable servants. We have done what it was our duty to do. And serve God and keep His commandments and quit lighting fires. Get off of Jawbone Hill and go help somebody. Go serve somebody with a humility that exhibits the love of God. And chase after Jesus if you're going to chase after something.
Yeah, that's
and
big.
let Jesus be the example and the leader in your life so that you don't feel like you got to crawl up on Jawbone Hill.
That's good.
I'm glad yours says Jawbone Hill because mine, I can't pronounce it.
Yeah, Rama Lehi or something.
Yeah.
Ramath Lehi.
You know what that means?
Jawbone Hill.
Jawbone Hill.
I read the little.
We just dropped so much knowledge in the course of this class.
That's why I like the
just read
NLT.
I just read the little footnote.
Jawbone Hill.
It means the heel of the jawbone.
Hill of the jawbone.
So, okay.
There you go.
All right, question number 4 is always the same. Who else do you know that needs to hear this? Who could benefit through a journey through another event in Samson's life? We're going to look at chapter 16 next week. Whew, it's going to be, we might have to cut that one in half
Yeah,
because
that
there's
one's
a
a little
lot
bit
there.
longer.
It'll be the beginning of the end next week of Samson, and then we'll start to draw Judges to a conclusion. Glad you joined us today. I do pray that God's blessing you and your family as you strive to live for Him. I pray for more of His favor to be with you. And we're just grateful. We're grateful you joined us and look forward to having you back here next week. Judges chapter 16. So read ahead and join us next time. Until then, have a great week and God bless.